is the fact that when I arrived, some of you may have come in around the same time. I took the red eye in Saturday, arriving Sunday, and it seemed incredibly warm. It was actually 30 degrees Celsius, which I didn't expect. It turns out, on record, it was the hottest October ever. And I guess this global warming is actually starting to have a bit of an effect. And I think we're expecting great weather for the next few weeks, so weather is certainly on the line. And some of you may not know about the Weather Channel. In fact, if you do know about the Weather Channel, I'd be somewhat surprised, although you would probably be keen observers of the mobile space, as we are largely based in the U.S. But one of the messages that we want to share here is that we've learned some things in the U.S. market that we would like to bring globally. And in fact, we are going to be expanding internationally, so we'd love to make this something where we present some ideas about what's happening in the mobile advertising space. Unfortunately, we can't make this interactive, but I hope that after the session I'll get a chance to speak with some of you about what you're doing and how we might work together. So, in the interest of sharing a bit about what we do first, so you know who we are, I'll take a little bit of time to do that, and then I'm going to do a deeper dive into some of the things that we've done in the area of mobile advertising that may be of interest both to you, your partners, and also to the consumers here in the space. So, when we look at what we're doing in mobile, the first question, as it should always be, is what do the consumers want? Right? We're looking at two masters in the sense of the consumer and also the partner. And we always err on the side of making sure that the consumer experience is optimized. So with that in mind, just to give you a sense of where consumers are going, if you look at some of the key categories, 18 to 34-year-olds, household income of 75, that's US dollars, plus, and moms, it's the expected folks. But what may not be expected is the Weather Channel is on that list. As a broad stroke, one of the things which I hope is evident to everybody in this audience is that there are very clear things that consumers demand in mobile. And the first two are obvious. I think the first two everybody expects. It's very subjective, but it's also something where if you don't have an optimized intuitive UX, you're going to lose your audience. A big issue right now, too, particularly with more of the personalized experience, is it needs to be something where your privacy is protected. You need to make sure that you have a trusted source, and that's something that the consumers are looking for more and more. But when you come to relevance, that really will vary for each one of us. When we talk about what's relevant to you, it could be where you are at the time, it could be what you've done in the past, it could be what your community and what your friends want. So this is where we've really taken the time to do a deeper dive, and we look at it as, you hear the phrase of solo and mobile, you hear people talk about mobile, social, and local. Well, what does that mean? One of the things, again, should come as no surprise, but if you look at the categories that the consumers are demanding, particularly when you're talking about mobile web, it's emails, it's search. Fortunately, weather tends to be on the top of the list as well as the usual suspects, social. If you look at it in the context of news, sports, and weather, that's what people want to have. They want to have where they are, they want to have relevant information. If you strip out games, certainly everyone has some form of mild or perhaps not so mild addiction to games like Angry Birds. If you strip out social, the categories, the genres that people are most concerned about are weather, maps, news. Search, again, is pretty obvious in sports. So you start to see themes. It doesn't matter how you cut the data, it's news, sports, and weather. It's getting the information, particularly with information that's on the go. So the other aspect of this is people they're trying to work within the environment of social. They're trying to discuss how we integrate with Facebook or Twitter or other social networks. But at the end of the day, what are inherently the topics that are important to people? And again, when we look at the research, we have the benefit of seeing that consumers are actually talking about, they're caring about what's going on. One of the statistics which I still find very hard to believe, but it's proven afterwards you can see the Australian report, but they said that women actually talk about the weather more than the opposite sex, gossip, shoes, and their love and sex like combined. So ultimately they care about it, they talk about it, but what they're talking about and what they care about, how do you translate that into mobile, and how do you make that something that's effective for the brand? view is that aside from the Weather Channel, weather itself is probably the most personal, most local, certainly the most social. In fact, people are talking about it for everyone every day. And you may not think about it, but when you look at what is part of the weather experience, it's what's the temperature, what are the conditions, and people are motivated, probably more than anything else, to provide very precise information about where they are. And as we're starting to see as the mobile industry is evolving, that's critical. And most consumers are concerned about providing that information, but when it comes to specific categories, if they want you to know what that information is, they will give you inordinate amounts of information. And that becomes data that you can translate into relevance and translate into improved campaigns for your partners. Just want to give you a quick framework of where we are in the United States. As I mentioned, we're going to be looking to expand outside of this area, but I want to make sure you understand why is the Weather Channel relevant in mobile. We've looked at it in the category of not just mobile devices, but also tablets, and we also have a strong background in other digital media areas. And as of right now, we have an 80% rating of exposure in that territory. Some of you may know also, as we look at how we're developing our strategy, and I think as each of you are developing your strategies, you need to be thinking about each of the screens. Now, we started back in 1999 looking at mobile web. Even before that, we were in the web space. We have the URL weather.com, we also have weather.co.uk, but ultimately, that's a URL that is a nice benchmark for folks. So we took that and we parlayed that into the mobile web. And as you've seen progression in the industry, and as you've heard earlier this morning, and you're going to hear later today and tomorrow, there's kind of different transitions and different evolutions of the mobile space depending on what the territories are. What we've seen in the U.S. market in particular is really 2007, 2008, the dawning of the app. You're starting to see an evolution of people migrating over to the newer devices, whether it's the iPhone or the Android. But a lot of people thought that the mobile web would disappear. In fact, that's not the case. In fact, what's happening is as you have a brand that's exposing itself on the mobile applications, mobile web, tablet, television, the online experience, the water is actually rising all of those. We're starting to see activity where you can truly become, people talk about kind of cross-platform, but I think most experiences are actually multi-platform. They're not cross-platform. And I think as we look at how advertisers and how marketers are viewing this space, we really do need to feed them across each of the screens. So we will have segments on air which will actually highlight the iPad or highlight the new tablet and bring people into the experience. Similarly with our iPad app, what we've done is we have parallel viewing. Some of you have probably noticed the trends. The iPad tends to be a weekend and an evening usage pattern. What that means is you can have parallel viewing, so you can actually have an experience on the iPad that you can also look at as you're looking at television, and you can do some creative things. As one example, we embedded an audio watermark, so when the iPad app is on and the television program is playing, it would actually launch content that was exclusive that you could only see that was telling the story about what was on the screen. So the portfolio continues to grow. I'm sure some of you have heard about Amazon's new Kindle Fire. We're happy to be one of the partners that's going to be launching with that device. So as we look in succession, whether it was being a launch partner of Apple on iPad, or whether it's looking at advancing our mobile web, there are so many touch points with the consumers. And I think ultimately for us, and I think for you, you really care about not necessarily the downloads, not necessarily the high statistics, but are people engaging? And I think that's our view is, it doesn't matter what your brand is, it doesn't matter who the partner is, there needs to be that level of engagement. So for us, success is not just the number of downloads. We certainly have a high number of downloads, but as you probably have seen in most markets, 75% of all applications are deleted within the first 90 days. So effectively, you got the download, but then no engagement. What we're finding is 60% of all of our downloads actually engage every day. And it makes sense, because ultimately you want to have that daily experience to understand what's the weather, what's the temperature. But I don't think that that trend is necessarily isolated for weather. There are ways that you can craft your content strategy so that you can engage folks and make sure that they don't delete the app, but actually use the app. And as a result, you're starting to see is the download usage and the coupling of the engagement experiences. We find ourselves in a pretty unique position in terms of the overall downloads. And I don't present this information as selling you on the Weather Channel. What I'm trying to do is just state that we have a high volume of information that we've leveraged, and I want to share with you some of the things that we've done leveraging that audience. And it's a pretty significant audience. So the research that we have and the data we've been able to gather puts us in a position to then, we believe, segment and also create some innovative things to do in the mobile advertising space. One of the things that I also want to highlight is that, as I mentioned, we're not looking just at a particular stream. The group that I'm in oversees what we call digital products, whether it's an application on a mobile device, whether it's something on a tablet. We also are the trusted provider in a white label sense. It's behind the scenes. You're not necessarily going to see the Weather Channel brand, but we also will provide flight plans for major airlines. So if you're up in the air in Virgin Airlines or American Airlines or BA, what we will do is we will provide them global systematic weather data to determine what the best path is, right? So if there's a high pressure system over Sao Paulo, we will route them differently based upon the weather. And I only bring that up simply because, as I mentioned before, the consumers really do care about the trusted data. And so the relationships that we have with the media companies that are starting to become global, and the relationships that we have in terms of energy and commodities, providing that weather data is essential. And providing whatever content is available, it needs to be something that the consumers trust. Because that's a large part of the feedback that we're getting, particularly on the mobile devices that are so personal. Another thing that we've done in most cases in a white label capacity is we are partnering with global media companies that are in need of weather data. And I think what we're starting to see too is that weather is shifting from purely a commodity where most people feel like it doesn't matter where the weather comes from. We're starting to see consumer feedback that no, there is actually brand loyalty, and there is actually something that is inherently different about different weather presentations, whether it's visualization of the weather, or whether it's data that's, again, more reliable. So many of our partners are global, and as a result, what we've decided to do is really ourselves look international. So one of the things that we're very pleased about having MMA enable us to present here and share what we're doing, as of this month, and looking ahead to November, this is a critical time for us. We just appointed a new head of international, so we're going to be looking to take all the learnings from the U.S. market and look at it in certainly Western Europe, looking at Latin America and other regions where there are opportunities. And myself and my product team, we're going to be hiring an expanding group of folks that are going to be maintaining a global portfolio. So we're going to have folks on the ground here in the UK. We've got about 3 or 4 folks already. I'm going to expand that significantly over the next few months. And what's great is that we actually have one of our science centers, one of our meteorologist centers is based in Birmingham. So we have a large team already that's providing the science of it. So now it's a matter of working with you and our internal teams to make sure that we can bring the best consumer experience. So all that aside, that was really just a groundwork to give you the context of what we've done in mobile and why it might be relevant for you. And I'm sure as you start to see scale in your business, you're going to start to see segmenting, you're going to start to see a lot of data about what consumers are doing. So I want to share some of the campaigns and some of the things we've done that have been incredibly successful that I hope you can use in your territories. So the first one is obvious, and the first one is probably the most relevant just for companies like ourselves, but the principle applies more broadly. It's this notion that an advertisement, if you're looking at it from the context of an ad network, it's very hard to decipher precisely where it's going. What we can do, and I think what many of you can do as publishers, is you can actually take some of the data that you're getting through that user experience with the consumer and make the ad experience much more relevant. So, as an example now, Benadryl might be a better example here because I don't think Zyrtec is available in the UK as of right now. But what we're doing is certain aspects of the weather, whether it's temperature, whether it's pollen count, what have you, can be weather triggering ads. And these are the type of things that we're actually doing very effectively in the experience, you don't necessarily want an advertisement unless, back to the point before, it's relevant. And weather certainly creates a nice opportunity to share something that, whether it's like you saw here, again, this is in Fahrenheit, but when you've got 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 degrees Celsius here, you can trigger an advertisement. So if it's cold, get a hot drink, get a hot tea. If it's hot, get something that's cool and refreshing. So these are the type of advertisements where, as you might imagine, you have incredibly high engagement, incredibly high usage, and it's relatively easy to do. A corollary to that is geo-targeting, and our philosophy, I think we shared by some of you here, is that when you look at IP-based targeting, it can be very inexact, because you don't necessarily know where people are routing from. So what we've done is we've created this hybrid approach, but we want to make sure that, again, the consumer understands that when they're typing in a specific location, we're going to enable that overall content experience on the app itself, or on the mobile web, or on the tablet, but also we're going to serve up inventory, whether it's an interactive experience or whether it's a banner ad that's relevant to that specific area. So, as an example, Continental Airlines is able to target based upon when you're looking at weather in New York, as an example. So, let's say if you're going to Singapore, you could actually have the airline specifically there for that territory based on what we know they're searching. Similarly, transit systems, whether it's, you can think about almost any number of locations, whether it's QSR, hotel, travel, it's putting something that's relevant in that area. And what's important to note is that it's not just putting the unit itself in that slot, but it's also customizing the unit. So these are dynamically served so that it's not just at the right time, but the message, the call to action, what you see in that advertisement is relevant to that consumer experience. And again, we're starting to see significant usage trends here. Dynamic targeting is another way to do it, so not just a boolean on or off is the ad going to be there, but how the ad itself change. So the evolution of, so think of it in the context of where you are and what's happening. The advertisement shouldn't look the same in every scenario. So in this particular case, when you have sunny and a temperature where this is a positive experience, you want to encourage people to get out. Get out, it's a beautiful day, go outside. The message here is it's a good day to go for a drive through a vehicle. And that can be any number of examples that you can think of. And this is, again, the consumer is now tying in and seeing that ad experience, so it's not something that's random, but it's actually relevant to what they should do. In this particular case, not so nice, right? It's raining, it's cloudy, but given the needs of the partner, they want to highlight the fact that their vehicle is safe in weather conditions. So this is an example where you can actually tailor the advertisements uniquely for the scenario of what's happening on the device. And you can think of any number of scenarios, right? We did a campaign similar with a keyword, snow for Audi, where when any of the weather conditions included snow, you would actually see the Audi ad. And because it was a rich media ad, if you clicked on it, you could see the vehicle driving in snowy conditions in a safe manner. So it was the consumer would see something relevant to that time of year, to that specific weather condition, and Audi was able to highlight the fact that one of their features, one of their differentiators was this ability to manage and handle that snow. One of the things that I also want to highlight here is you should, if you look in the description of what we're talking about, is how is Weather Channel looking at mobile, it also highlights what are the mistakes that we've learned. So some of the things that we've decided is that the way people use their devices and when they use their devices, you can't treat them all the same. If you do, you're leaving money on the table. The best way to think about it is the experience on an iPhone and an iPad needs to be mapped separately. So what we've done is we've actually created date marks not too similar from what you see in any category of advertisement. So when you've got dips here, you can actually look to other media. And when you've got spikes, you can go ahead and plan the inventory and the branding based upon what's happening during the day and during that particular time for the device. So let me give you an example of how we've done this. So the overall navigation of our weather application is fairly straightforward. Most of the people have a certain pattern to track where they go and when. And in the 36-hour window, that tends to be when people think about the weekend. So a significant, high double-digit percentage of folks will go to the 36-hour forecast on Thursdays, or they'll go on Fridays looking ahead to Saturdays and Sundays, what's happening. And it makes a lot of sense, right? How do you go ahead and plan? Is it going to be nice? So I'm outside, am I going to spend some time with my friends, or do I need to go to the theater and it's going to be cold or rain? So what we did was, with Burger King, they knew they were going to be giving out free drinks on Fridays. So what they did was they specifically did the day part campaign where they tailored the ad so that only the people that were searching in that area, invariably the people that were going to be there on Fridays, would see this creative. And this is again a dynamic serve. It kind of was a window shade roll down, and the engagement was when they clicked on it. Again, everything is simply opt-in, but they also wanted to know, hey, would you like to find out where the nearest location is? So I'm hoping the wheels are turning. You can start to not only take the day part aspect of this, but now you can take the location element and determine an instant activity that's based upon what's happening. So if you want to know where the next location is, you continue, and then what we've done is you transfer the initial location of where they started the experience. So in this particular case, it was in Manhattan. And now they can see, hey, this is where you can go. And now the brand partner is able to have that experience that's relevant to where the consumer is. And not surprisingly, incredible usage on these things. Folks love this. And I think many of your clients that are looking at innovation in the mobile space, this is something you can only do in mobile. And it's something that you can only do if you have that key information about what the consumers are doing. Another example is event countdowns. It can be seasonal. It can be something where there's a particular client that has a campaign or there's a marketing launch. So what we've done is a whole range. It can be 10 days, 30 days. And I think you're going to have to look with your clients to see what's the most effective range, when you lose them, or when is it something that's effective. But what we're seeing is about 10 days. So if anything longer than that, you tend to lose interest. Anything shorter than that, maybe there's not enough build-up. So in this particular case, it was a 10-day lead, and as you can see, the ad unit actually does a countdown. So 3, 2, and then actually on that day, in this particular case, it was tied into daylight savings. So when daylight savings occurred, Philips had a new product that they wanted to sell. And it was something where it was tied in directly to daylight savings time. So it was a direct call to action, so you could actually learn how to get back some of your time. And when someone clicked on this creative, it would pop up, again, very clearly you know as an advertisement, it would give you this new wake-up light, which would help people make the transition for daylight savings time. Now, the other element which you can only do, certainly in these interactive environments and digital, is certainly brand awareness here. It's certainly powerful to see. Philips is certainly front and center, but ultimately, in this case, they wanted to sell units. And I'm sure that as you look at the various campaigns, awareness may be something that you want. In the case of Burger King, they wanted to drive people to the locations. In the case of Philips, they wanted to sell units. So we also have the ability to go directly to the buy page from the site. And again, you can probably expect any of the location-based times, you can certainly pass that information so you can buy it in a store that's close to where they are. And again, you're going to see a much higher conversion based upon something that's relevant to what they want, relevant to the time, relevant to where they are. So another example is something that I would encourage all of you to take a look at is the tap app. And it may not necessarily be brand exposure, it may not be sales, it may not be something that you're looking for to move a product, but you might actually want to raise awareness for your mobile apps. You may want to raise awareness for something that you're doing in digital. So in this particular case, Toyota Prius, they created a new application, a downloadable iPhone app that they wanted to raise awareness for. So at the time, I think our numbers were something like 45 million. So even if they can get a small percentage of that to download, it would certainly inflate their exposure. So again, what we did was we had a window shade, and when they clicked on it, it would have something well-positioned product, well-positioned branding, but it would also have a call to action to download the application. So when folks clicked on that, it would actually send them directly into the page where they could download the application. So here's an example where Toyota wasn't necessarily concerned about sending them to a Toyota dealership. It wasn't necessarily concerned about giving more product information, because they knew that if we could actually drive people to this application, then that experience would be managed by them. And when you download this app, not surprisingly, it would give you all of that information. So you can probably think about any number of examples where any of your clients are looking for something that's, again, relevant to where they are and relevant to what their business is. One of the other things to look at in the context of how people are utilizing mobile, and you've heard a little bit about this, and I'm sure you've heard about it through the course of the day, but there's that fine line between what people are looking for in that experience, kind of understanding what's happening right now with this, the privacy issues, with the, do they want something on their device again that's going to be instantly usable, whether it's a coupon or whether it's something within commerce. What we're finding, and we've done some research, and this research confirms it, is as long as they get some form of a reward, and again, it's not a reward that's necessarily independent of what they want, but it's a reward that's relevant to them, or if you can give them a freebie, right? And by the way, as a side note, I've heard some of the folks here, if you're not giving something away, you might be down a few rungs. So if anyone is interested about what we're doing and looking at the web channel as a brand, come see me, give me your card, and I think we're going to try and give a few folks some clothes, some umbrellas, or some other things that we can have. We might actually tie that into a campaign as well, but freebies and things that are relevant are things that people really want. And another thing too is that growing percentage of folks have actually used mobile coupons. So the final one, the largest category as we look ahead, is really something that I want all of you to think about in your minds. Rich media and the tablet, which we consider to be part of mobile, is changing the way you should think about advertising dramatically. Don't think about tablet as a phone. Don't think about it as the web. Don't think about it as television. Don't think about it as a book. It's all of those things. It's all of those things combined. So one of the things that we would encourage everybody to do is to look at some of these innovative rich media campaigns. So in this particular case, you've got cloudy conditions on an iPad. You can demonstrate that very dramatically. So it means they have a wipe away, so you can go to some exotic place where the weather is significantly nicer. And taking advantage of the gesture and the touch. So think about, in terms of what the advertisers want, think out of the box and look at pretty creative. The final point that I'll leave you with is all of these different screens have an impact. They're not just random disjointed campaigns. If you can touch the consumers on multiple campaigns and multiple platforms, the effectiveness, the recognition for brand goes up exponentially. If you can touch them on 3 screens, it goes up 20x in terms of recall. So we're not just doing this as an exercise to try all these screens. If you have a concerted method and a plan, you see significant lift for all your clients. If you want to reach me afterwards, my email is just Jensen, the Danish spelling, Jensen @weather.com. I hope this was helpful for you, and the message we want to send is we're looking to grow internationally, so we'll be working with many of you.
Thanks, Scott.